Welcome to the Human Archive. If you enjoy original science fiction stories about humanity finding its place among the stars, subscribe and join us for the next story. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The Human Who Always Walked Away. Kharvek had watched the human refuse 7 fights. That was enough evidence for him. By the 8th refusal, he considered the matter settled. Humans were cowards. Not all cowards were contemptible, of course. Kharvek understood that smaller, prey-descended species often avoided confrontation because evolution had rewarded escape over dominance. That was biology, not shame. Humans were different. Humans bragged. They spoke endlessly of warriors, soldiers, combat sports, rebellions, dangerous ancestors, and a homeworld that apparently tried to kill them every few kilometers. Then one of them got challenged in a bar and suddenly remembered an urgent appointment somewhere else. Kharvek found the contradiction irritating. He sat beneath the amber lights of the Red Comet drinking hall and watched the station's evening traffic move past the open entrance. The Red Comet occupied the central promenade of Meridian Exchange, one of the largest commercial stations on the Meridian trade corridor. Nearly 200 species passed through Meridian every standard cycle. The station had restaurants, casinos, dockyards, temples, embassies, 3 hospitals, 7 detention centers, and according to Kharvek, only one establishment that served raka properly chilled. The Red Comet was also licensed for consensual dominance contests. That mattered. Among many species, minor physical confrontation was socially useful. Arguments could be settled, status established, insults answered. Nothing lethal, nothing permanent. Station law required both parties to consent, weapons to remain secured, and combat to stop when either participant yielded. Most species understood. Humans almost never participated. Kharvek leaned back in the reinforced seat designed for his species. He belonged to the Vorrak. Vorrak males averaged 2.5 meters in height, with broad armored shoulders, dense musculature, and 4 powerful arms, each hand ending in 3 hooked claws. Their jaws looked carnivorous because they were. Their reputation exaggerated little. A Vorrak challenge display could empty a corridor. A Vorrak fight could empty a room. Kharvek had won 32 formal contests and lost 9. Both numbers pleased him. Losing taught, winning confirmed the lesson. Across the table, a narrow-faced Ceylan trader rotated his glass between 6 fingers. You are obsessed with the human. I am not obsessed. You have mentioned him 4 times. I am correcting misinformation. The trader looked toward the bar entrance. About one maintenance engineer. About humans. The Ceylan made a soft clicking sound. Kharvek knew the gesture meant amusement. They claim to be a deathworld species, Kharvek continued. They are from a Class 9 biosphere. Classification based on pathogens, weather variation, and tectonic instability. Also predators. Every world has predators. Humans are predators. The Ceylan trader looked unimpressed. Humans eat packaged noodles. Exactly. I do not understand your argument. Neither did Kharvek suddenly. He ignored that. At the next table, 2 cargo pilots listened openly. One was Pelosian. The other belonged to an avian species Kharvek did not recognize. Kharvek raised his voice. I have seen the human Rourke challenged 7 times. The Pelosian turned. 7. 7. And he refused every one. The Pelosian's eye stalks tilted. Perhaps he does not enjoy being hit. Then he should stop claiming his species invented boxing. The avian pilot chirped, What is boxing? A human combat ritual. With weapons. Hands. The avian looked toward Kharvek's claws. Only hands. So I am told. How many opponents? 1. That sounds inefficient. Kharvek approved of the observation. Then the bar door opened, and the subject of the conversation walked in. Evan Rourke looked nothing like a creature that should have inspired humanity's absurd reputation. By Meridian standards, he was neither especially tall nor especially large. 187 human centimeters, roughly 95 kilograms, 2 arms, 2 legs, no claws, no scales, no armor, and no fangs worth mentioning. His skin was embarrassingly exposed. Kharvek had once watched a human cut himself opening industrial packaging. Deathworld species. Ridiculous. Evan wore gray station work trousers, heavy boots, and a dark maintenance shirt with the sleeves rolled halfway up his forearms. A tool pouch still hung from his belt. Beside him walked Tali. Tali belonged to the Kirin. Kirin were small, feathered bipeds whose ancestors had spent most of their evolutionary history avoiding things shaped roughly like Kharvek. She stood barely to Evan's shoulder. Her plumage was pale gold with dark markings around her eyes, and she worked cargo allocation on Ring 4. Kharvek knew this because she and Evan were nearly always together, not romantically as far as anyone could determine. Humans complicated relationships unnecessarily. Tali saw Kharvek first, her feathers flattened. Evan followed her gaze. He sighed. That pleased Kharvek immensely. Fear. Finally, some honesty. Evan approached the bar. Evening, Jessa. The bartender, a four-armed Morathi, placed a bottle on the counter before he finished sitting down. You look tired. Coolant leak on 12. Bad. Only if you like breathable atmosphere. Tali climbed onto the stool beside him. I told him the maintenance alarm meant something. You tell everyone every alarm means something. They do. The coffee machine has an alarm. And last week it caught fire. That was unrelated. Kharvek rose. The Sellan trader made a noise of interest. Several patrons turned. Evan noticed. His shoulders dropped instead of rising. Kharvek had seen that reaction before, resignation. Excellent, he walked toward the bar. Tali looked from Kharvek to Evan. No. Evan took a drink. I didn't say anything. You made the face. I have one face. You have several. That one means you are about to make my evening difficult. Kharvek stopped behind them. Human. Evan turned slowly. Vorrak. My name is Kharvek. I know. You know me. You're very loud. Someone laughed. Kharvek ignored it. I have a question. Evan looked at his drink. That's usually how these things start. Kharvek placed one hand on the bar. You claim humans are dangerous. No. Kharvek paused. You do not. I don't remember claiming anything. Your species claims to come from a deathworld. That's what the paperwork says. You claim humans possess combat traditions. We have quite a few. Yet you refuse every challenge. Yes. The bar quieted. Kharvek expected embarrassment. Instead, Evan took another drink. Why? Because I don't want to fight you. Several patrons laughed. Kharvek's neck plates tightened. You are afraid. Also, yes. That stopped the laughter. Kharvek stared at him. Evan looked entirely comfortable. You admit fear. Of getting punched? Absolutely. The Pelosian at the nearby table made a confused bubbling noise. Kharvek leaned closer. Are all humans cowards? Evan thought about it. No. Then he took another drink. Most of us just have jobs tomorrow. The room erupted. Even the bartender laughed. Kharvek did not. Vorrak culture tolerated humor. It tolerated mockery much less. He straightened. Fight me. No. A formal challenge. No. You may choose first strike. No. I will restrain my claws. No. Kharvek's voice lowered. Then admit your species' reputation is false. Evan looked at him. For the first time, some of the boredom disappeared. Not anger, but something more attentive. You really care about this? Yes. Why? Because weakness hidden behind reputation is dishonorable. Evan glanced toward Tali. She gave him an expression Kharvek could not interpret. Evan returned his attention to the Vorrak. I don't think you understand humans very well. Then educate me. No. Kharvek's plates rose. Evan smiled faintly. There it is. What? You don't actually want an answer. I want proof. That's different. Kharvek stepped closer. Evan did not move. Interesting. You avoid confrontation. Yes. You retreat from insults. Usually. You refuse challenge. Yes. Then what should I conclude? Evan looked up at him. That I don't care whether you think I'm tough. The answer hit harder than an insult. Kharvek's claws flexed against the bar. Tali shifted. Evan. I know. No, you do not. His shoulders changed. I noticed. Kharvek looked toward the Kirin. You defend him. Tali's feathers rose. I am warning him. That produced another round of laughter. Kharvek's temper sharpened. He moved sideways, placing his body between Tali and the open section of the bar. Perhaps the human does not require your protection. Tali stepped back, Kharvek followed. Evan's bottle touched the counter, quietly. Kharvek. The Vorrak looked toward him. Move. At last, there was something different in the human's voice. Kharvek felt it and liked it. Or. Evan stood, still smaller, still soft-looking, still without claws, but he was no longer smiling. Leave her alone. Kharvek looked down at Tali. The Kirin's eyes were wide. Vorrak dominance custom allowed physical intimidation without contact, and Kharvek knew Kirin instincts reacted badly to looming predators. That was partly why he did it. He regretted it later. At the time, it felt like a useful demonstration. You refuse to defend your own pride, Kharvek said. Will you defend hers? Evan stepped between them. Yes. Kharvek's pulse quickened. Good. Evan shook his head. No. The human's voice remained calm. You're still misunderstanding me. I understand perfectly. He did not. Station law had already given him Evan's answer. No. Vorrak pride told him the human was merely posturing, and Kharvek chose pride. Kharvek struck him, not with claws and not at full force, but with the back of his knuckles, the formal opening blow of a Vorrak contest. It caught Evan across the mouth and snapped the human's head sideways. Tali screamed. Several patrons jumped from their seats. Evan caught himself against the bar. Silence fell. Kharvek waited. Under Vorrak custom, a struck challenger could return the blow, yield, or leave. Kharvek treated Evan's decision to remain as acceptance. Station law did not. Instead, the human straightened. Blood appeared at the corner of Evan's mouth. He touched it with 2 fingers, looked at the red, then looked at Kharvek. You get one. Kharvek smiled. He still believed Evan had accepted the rules of a contest Evan had repeatedly refused. That assumption would cost him. Chapter 2. Humans have rules. Kharvek hit him again, harder. The strike landed cleanly across Evan's cheek. This time Kharvek expected him to fall. He did not. Evan staggered half a step. His boots scraped against the floor. Then he looked back. Kharvek's satisfaction weakened. Vorrak strikes were designed to destabilize. Their long arms generated enormous rotational force, and even ritual blows shifted balance. Evan had no tail, secondary legs, or visible stabilization anatomy, yet he remained standing. Kharvek adjusted his footing. Tali moved away from the bar. Kharvek, she said, stop. He accepted the contest. I absolutely did not, Evan replied. Kharvek tilted his head. You remained. That isn't consent. Then yield. No. Fight. No. Kharvek's plates flared. Tali looked at Evan. Please hit him. Evan wiped blood from his lip. I am trying very hard not to. That unsettled several people. Kharvek heard it in the silence. He mistook the feeling for anticipation. He launched the 3rd strike. This one was not ceremonial. Evan moved. Kharvek barely saw how. One moment the human stood in front of him. The next, Evan shifted inside the arc of Kharvek's arm, not backward, forward. Kharvek's hand passed harmlessly behind him. Evan caught the wrist with both hands, stepped across Kharvek's leading foot, rotated his hips, and pulled. The world tilted. Kharvek had time to feel surprise. Then 230 kilograms of Vorrak struck a table hard enough to split it in half. The entire bar froze. Kharvek lay among fragments of composite furniture. Something was wrong. The human had not lifted him, not really. Kharvek's own movement had done most of the work. That was worse. He pushed himself upright. Evan stood 3 meters away with his hands raised, not fists but open palms. Stay down. Kharvek stared. That phrase made no sense. A dominant fighter did not surrender advantage. A Vorrak who established control followed with a submission strike to the shoulder, chest, or sometimes the jaw, enough to demonstrate that the fallen opponent remained vulnerable. Evan had stepped away. Why? Kharvek rose. Evan sighed. Don't. The bar had become very quiet. Kharvek advanced. Your technique was clever. Thanks. Again. No. Kharvek lunged. This time he kept his balance low. He expected the human to repeat the maneuver. Evan did not. Instead, he moved sideways, fast. His boot struck the outside of Kharvek's knee. Pain flashed through the joint, not catastrophic, precise. Kharvek's leg buckled. Evan immediately caught his forearm and twisted it behind his body. Kharvek dropped to one knee. The position was humiliating. More importantly, it hurt. Evan leaned close. Stop. Kharvek snarled. He drove backward. The human released him instantly. Again, no finishing strike, no attempt to capitalize, nothing. Kharvek turned. Why do you keep retreating? Evan's expression was almost incredulous. Because I want this to end. It ends when one of us yields. I have been trying to leave for 10 minutes. That is not the same. It is where I come from. Kharvek's pride burned. You mock Vorrak custom. No. Evan pointed toward the floor. I am telling you this isn't a Vorrak contest. Kharvek bared his teeth. You are fighting. Because you keep attacking me. Then defeat me. Evan's hands lowered slightly. I don't want to. The words were not fear. Kharvek understood that now. That made them unbearable. You believe you can. Evan looked at him. Tali whispered something in Kirin. The bartender reached beneath the counter, probably activating station security. Kharvek did not care. You believe you can defeat me. Evan's jaw tightened. I believe this conversation has gotten stupid. Kharvek roared and charged. Evan braced. Kharvek expected another throw. Instead, Evan stepped in. His shoulder struck Kharvek's chest. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then Evan's leg hooked behind Kharvek's ankle. His weight shifted. Kharvek lost balance. The human drove forward, both hit the floor. Kharvek rolled. Evan moved with him, one arm trapped. Neck controlled. Evan's weight settled across Kharvek's upper back, not enough to crush, only enough to stop movement. Kharvek pushed. Evan adjusted. Kharvek twisted. Evan followed. Every attempt to escape made the position tighter. Kharvek's breathing shortened. The human was using leverage, not strength, not entirely. That distinction became less comforting when Kharvek realized Evan was also very strong. Yield, Evan said. Kharvek growled. No. Then stop moving. No. Kharvek. No. The human released him. Again, Kharvek surged upward. 3 Vorrak cargo workers at the far side of the bar stood, not close friends but Vorrak. That was enough. One step toward Evan. You dishonor him. Evan looked at the newcomer. What? You release him before submission. I'm trying not to hurt him. The Vorrak's eyes narrowed. Kharvek felt something unpleasant. Humiliation. The others heard it too. One spread his claws. Perhaps the human requires assistance understanding contest. Evan looked around. 4 Vorrak now stood between him and the door. Tali whispered. Oh no. Evan looked toward her. Stay behind the bar. Evan. Please. Something in his voice made her obey. The bartender ducked with her. Kharvek rose fully. His injured knee complained. Evan looked at the 4 Vorrak. The security indicator above the door was still dark. Help was not here yet. Evan exhaled through his nose. Seriously. The first cargo worker swung, and the fight stopped being ritual. Chapter 3. The wrong kind of fight. The first thing Kharvek learned was that humans did not fight in turns. The Vorrak cargo worker attacked from the left, Kharvek moved from the front, and another approached from the right. Under Vorrak instinct, the pattern was natural. Threats established position, the strongest attacker engaged, and the others waited for an opening. Evan did none of that. He moved directly toward the nearest threat before the formation could settle. His fist struck the first Vorrak beneath the jaw, not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to snap the head back. Before the alien could recover, Evan seized one arm and pulled him across Kharvek's path. Kharvek collided with his own ally. Evan was gone. The human moved behind them. The third Vorrak swung. Evan ducked. The claws passed over his head. Evan drove 2 short punches into the alien's side. The sound was dull. The Vorrak gasped, not from pain, but from a sudden inability to breathe. Evan kicked the back of his knee. The alien dropped. Evan shoved him sideways into a table. Kharvek turned too slowly. Evan hit him once in the ribs. Kharvek barely felt it through the armor. Then the human hit the exact same spot again. Pain detonated. Kharvek staggered. Evan stepped away, still offering distance, still giving them room to stop. Nobody did. The 4th Vorrak grabbed him from behind. At last. A mistake, Kharvek knew immediately. The alien had both arms wrapped around Evan's chest. Humans required chest expansion to breathe. The hold should have immobilized him. Evan dropped his weight. His head snapped backward. The back of his skull struck the Vorrak's face. Cartilage cracked. The hold loosened. Evan stamped down on the alien's foot, rotated, trapped one arm, and drove an elbow into the side of the neck. The Vorrak collapsed against the bar. Evan caught him before his head struck the edge. Actually caught him, lowered him, then turned back to the others. Kharvek stared. That was when Kharvek began to understand the fight was wrong. Not unfair. Wrong. Vorrak combat had a rhythm, threat, attack, response, advantage, submission. Evan seemed to have no equivalent structure. He used everything, furniture, angles, bodies, momentum. He moved behind one opponent so another could not strike, changed levels and direction, attacked before a challenge display finished, retreated without shame, and advanced without warning. There was no ceremony in it. Worse, there was calculation. The third Vorrak recovered and charged. Evan shifted behind a support pillar. The alien swung around it. Evan caught the wrist and slammed the forearm against the edge. The claws spasmed open. Evan turned the limb until the shoulder locked. The Vorrak froze. One more movement would dislocate it. Evan stopped. Done. The alien snarled. Evan tightened the lock slightly. Done. Yes. Evan released him immediately. The alien stumbled away. Kharvek stared. Yield had worked. Not ceremonial submission, just a simple verbal answer. Evan accepted it without a dominance display, without humiliation, without even looking at the alien again. Then Kharvek hit him. The blow caught Evan in the ribs and launched him sideways. The human struck the bar hard. Glass shattered. Evan dropped to one knee. Kharvek advanced. Now the human would stop. Instead, Evan inhaled sharply. His face changed. Not fear, pain. Real pain. Kharvek felt satisfaction. Then Evan stood. Kharvek's satisfaction vanished. You are injured. Evan touched his side. I noticed. Kharvek struck again. Evan blocked most of it with his forearm, but one claw slipped free. It opened a line across his upper arm. Blood appeared immediately, bright red and far too much of it. Tali cried out from behind the bar. Evan looked at the wound, then at Kharvek. Something changed in Evan's eyes, not rage, that would have made sense. The calculation simply became colder, and at last Kharvek's instincts supplied the correct word, danger. He ignored them. The cargo worker with the broken nose lunged again. Evan pivoted. One hand caught the attacking wrist, the other struck the inner elbow. The joint bent. The Vorrak roared. Evan swept the leg. The alien hit the floor. Evan placed a boot beside the alien's throat, not on it, but close enough that everyone understood. Stay. The alien stayed. Kharvek charged. Evan barely turned in time. The impact drove both of them into a table. The composite surface broke beneath Evan's back. For one instant, Kharvek had him. He raised one fist. Evan struck upward. His palm hit beneath Kharvek's jaw. Teeth slammed together. Kharvek's vision flashed. Evan twisted out. Kharvek recovered. The human did not. Evan rolled his shoulder once and stopped. He tried again. His face tightened and the arm hung wrong, dislocated. Kharvek knew enough anatomy to recognize a failed joint. The fight should have been over. Evan walked to a support beam. Tali's eyes widened. No. He braced the injured arm, gripped his wrist, and shifted his shoulder against the support. No, no, no. He pulled and drove the joint inward with one brutal movement. A wet, heavy pop sounded across the bar. Half the room recoiled. Evan doubled forward, face white, then slowly stood and tested the arm once. Okay. Kharvek took one step backward without meaning to. That frightened him more than anything else. Evan advanced. Kharvek attacked because he did not know what else to do. The human slipped the strike. A fist hit Kharvek's abdomen. Another hit the same injured rib. Evan moved behind him. Kharvek turned, too late. Evan hooked one leg, drove forward. Kharvek fell. Before Kharvek could rise, Evan's knee settled between his shoulder blades. One arm locked, his head controlled. Kharvek pushed, pain flared through the shoulder, and Evan immediately stopped increasing pressure. Are you done? Kharvek breathed hard. The bar had gone completely silent. His pride screamed. His body gave a different answer. Yes. Evan released him immediately. No finishing strike. No roar, no display. He simply stood. The remaining Vorrak stared. One was on the floor holding his ribs. One leaned against the bar, nose bleeding. One had already yielded. Kharvek remained on one knee. Evan looked around. Anybody else? No one moved. Evan nodded once. Great. Then station security arrived. 6 officers flooded through the entrance. Weapons raised. The lead officer stopped and took in the shattered tables, the injured Vorrak, the blood on the floor, and finally Evan. The human's shirt was torn, blood ran down one arm, one eye had begun swelling, and he looked exhausted. He raised both hands. The security chief stared at him. What happened? Evan opened his mouth. Kharvek spoke first. I struck him. The chief looked toward him, first. Yes. The bartender raised all 4 hands. Cameras caught everything. The chief looked upward. Every surveillance lens in the bar pointed toward Kharvek. Evan sighed. I'd really like to go to medical now. Then his knees buckled. Tali vaulted the bar. She reached him before he hit the floor. Chapter 4. The medical examination. Dr. Shiri Tal had treated radiation poisoning, vacuum exposure, spinal trauma, claw wounds, venom reactions, and 3 species whose hearts could stop for several minutes without technically dying. She had never treated a human after a bar fight. This surprised her. Humans had been aboard Meridian Exchange for 23 years. Apparently, they avoided medical facilities after social violence with remarkable dedication. Rourke became her first. She was not pleased. "Sit still." "I am sitting." "You are attempting to stand." "I was adjusting." "You are leaving." "I need to check on Tali." "Tali is outside, threatening for Vorrak." Evan blinked. "With what?" "Administrative consequences." He relaxed. "Okay, they're doomed." Dr. Tal stared at him. Human humor was clearly a stress pathology. She returned to the scanner. Cracked rib, severe bruising, recent anterior shoulder dislocation manually reduced, 3 superficial lacerations, 1 deeper laceration requiring closure. Split lip, mild concussion, multiple contusions, elevated inflammatory response. Elevated stress chemistry, very elevated stress chemistry. Tal frowned. She rescanned. "Your endocrine levels are abnormal." Evan looked toward the ceiling. "Adrenaline." "I know what adrenaline is." "Then we're making progress." She glared. Evan stopped smiling. Tal enlarged the readout. "Your heart rate peaked at 184 beats per minute." "Sounds about right." "Your respiratory rate exceeded normal maximum." "Fight." "Your blood contained enough catecholamines to significantly alter pain perception." "Also fight." "You continued after your shoulder left its socket." Evan looked at her. "They kept trying to hit me." Dr. Tal stared. "That is not a medical explanation." "It is kind of the whole story." She pulled up human baseline data. The more she read, the less she liked it. Fight or flight response. Adrenaline, cortisol, endorphins. Temporary increases in cardiac output, pain suppression, narrowed attention, mobilization of stored energy, altered perception, even increased clotting response. Humans had an emergency biological mode. Many species did. The human version appeared offensively enthusiastic. You become chemically altered during violence. Evan considered. "Yes. Your body temporarily prioritizes survival over long-term tissue protection." "Pretty much." "That is dangerous." "Very." "You may worsen injuries without realizing it." "Yes." "You may continue functioning after damage that should cause withdrawal." "Yes." Dr. Tal lowered the scanner. "Why does your species do this?" Evan looked mildly offended. "We didn't design it." "That does not answer the question." "Evolution doesn't take suggestions." Tal rubbed 2 fingers across her forehead. Humans were exhausting. The door opened. The station security chief entered. Chief Rel belonged to the Gathan, a heavy-bodied species with a reputation for patience. He did not look patient. "Rourke." Evan raised one hand. "Chief. Can you explain why 4 Vorrak are in surgical assessment?" "Bad communication." Rel stared. Evan sighed. "They attacked me." "I watched the recording." "Then that saves time." Rel remained still. "That is the problem." Evan frowned. The chief activated a portable display. Footage from the Red Comet appeared. The fight played from overhead. Rel slowed it, highlighted Evan's movement. "You have formal combat training." "Boxed for 6 years, wrestled in school, took judo later." Rel watched the frozen frame. "That explains some of it. Industrial rescue explains the rest." Dr. Tal looked over. Evan shrugged carefully. "Panic people fight rescuers. We trained restraint, holds, leverage, and how to put someone on the floor without breaking them." Rel resumed the footage. The first Vorrak lunged. Evan stepped inside. The display flashed red along the alien's throat. Potential lethal target. Evan's actual strike landed on the jaw. Rel advanced the recording. Another moment. Red indicators appeared across the temple, cervical spine, airway, and an arterial structure. Evan struck the ribs. Again, potential lethal path. Evan changed angle. Again. Dr. Tal stopped breathing. "How many?" Rel looked at the analysis. 17 high-probability opportunities for lethal or permanently disabling force. Evan's expression hardened. "That's a stupid metric." It is the station's combat analysis system. It doesn't know what I would actually do. Rel looked at him. Apparently it does. The chief froze the image. Evan had one Vorrak's arm trapped. His other hand was raised. A direct strike to the throat was open. Instead, Evan used the hand to control the shoulder. Rel looked at him. Why? Evan stared at the image. Why what? Why not strike? Because I didn't need to. The answer silenced the room. Dr. Tal looked from the recording to the injured human. The frightening thing was not that Evan had become violent. The footage showed the opposite. He had remained selective while bleeding, injured, surrounded, and chemically flooded with a biological emergency response. Selective. Chief Rel changed footage. The dislocated shoulder, Evan bracing against the wall. Dr. Tal visibly recoiled. I would like to officially object to that part. Evan nodded. Fair. Rel stopped playback. Kharvek says he treated your remaining after the first blow as acceptance under Vorrak custom. It was. No, station law agrees with you. He initiated non-consensual violence, and the cameras make that clear. Good. He also believed you were humiliating him by refusing finishing strikes. Evan stared. What finishing strikes? Rel explained. Evan closed his eyes. Oh, for God's sake. Dr. Tal tilted her head. Who is God? Not relevant. Rel sat opposite him. There is another issue, not responsibility, communication. Of course there is. Every time you disengaged, you were offering him an exit. He read it as an unfinished contest. Evan looked at him. That still isn't my fault. No, but if humans and Vorrak are going to share a station, both species need to understand what withdrawal means to the other. Evan considered that, then nodded reluctantly. Fair. Dr. Tal looked between them. What assumption? Evan answered, that if I back off, the other guy understands I'm giving him a chance to stop. Kharvek interpreted withdrawal as weakness. I figured that out eventually. Rel folded his hands. Why do humans withdraw? Evan looked at him. Because fighting is dangerous. The chief waited. So are Vorrak contests. No. Evan shook his head. Not like this. Rel's eyes narrowed. Evan looked toward the frozen image on the display. When humans fight for real, there isn't always a clean stopping point. Dr. Tal glanced toward his injuries. Evan continued. One punch can kill somebody, not because you're stronger than everyone, because they fall wrong. Head hits a floor, neck hits an edge. Somebody panics and grabs a weapon. Somebody's friend jumps in. Then somebody else does. Suddenly the original argument doesn't matter. Rel listened. So humans avoid physical challenges because escalation is unpredictable. Smart humans do. The door opened again. Tali entered. Her feathers were still raised. Behind her stood Kharvek. One side of the Vorrak's face had swollen. Medical wrap circled his ribs. He looked enormous in the doorway. Dr. Tal reached for the emergency alarm. Evan stopped her. It's okay. Kharvek looked toward the combat display. The 17 marked opportunities remained visible. His eyes moved from them to Evan. You spared me. Evan's face tightened. Don't call it that. What should I call it? Not trying to kill you. Kharvek stared. That distinction is small. It's huge. Kharvek looked back at the screen. You could have struck my throat. Probably. My orbital joint. Yes. My cervical seam. Evan looked uncomfortable. Yeah. You saw those openings. Yes. And chose lesser targets. I chose enough. The Vorrak stood very still. You were holding back. Evan sighed. Everyone in a bar fight should be holding back. Kharvek looked toward Chief Rel. Is that human doctrine? Rel answered before Evan could. I have spent the last hour reviewing human self-defense law. His expression became deeply tired. They have entire legal systems for determining how much violence is too much violence. Kharvek looked genuinely astonished. Why? Tali answered, because humans are like this. No one disputed her. Chapter 5. What humans are afraid of. Kharvek waited 11 days before speaking to Evan again, partly because his ribs hurt, mostly because he did not know what to say. The human tried to return to work after 3 days. Dr. Tal had recommended 7. Evan argued for 4. Dr. Tal threatened to sedate him. He returned at 5. Kharvek learned this from Tali. He did not ask why Tali continued speaking to him after the Red Comet incident. Kirin forgiveness appeared even more confusing than human violence. Perhaps the two species were compatible for that reason. Kharvek found Evan inside Maintenance Bay 12. The human was kneeling beside an atmospheric pump with one arm still partially braced. He looked up, saw Kharvek, then looked toward the nearest exit. Kharvek noticed. "I am not challenging you." Evan returned to the pump. "Great start." Kharvek stepped inside. "You continue to mock me." "A little. I nearly killed you." "Also true." Kharvek waited. Evan tightened something inside the machine. Finally, the Vorrak asked, "Why did you say you were afraid?" Evan stopped. Kharvek continued. "At the Red Comet, I accused you of fear. You agreed." "I was afraid." "Of me?" "Partly." Kharvek's plates shifted. "But you defeated me." "That doesn't mean I wasn't afraid." Vorrak culture treated fear differently. Fear was information, but admitting it publicly during a challenge carried enormous meaning. You did not believe fear required withdrawal. It usually encourages it. That is not what I mean. Evan set down the tool. He sat against the side of the pump housing. Kharvek lowered himself onto a reinforced crate. "What do humans fear in combat?" Evan looked at him, losing. "That is obvious." "Getting hurt." "Also obvious." "Killing somebody." Kharvek went still. Evan looked down at his hands. "That's the part you didn't understand. You feared killing me." "I feared the whole thing getting out of control." Kharvek considered the answer. "My species possesses inhibition." "I know. You studied us." "After the fight." Kharvek's eyes narrowed. Evan smiled faintly. "Figured I should probably understand the giant alien who kept trying to punch me." Kharvek accepted this. Evan continued. "Your fights are ritualized before anybody teaches you the rules. Our instincts limit serious damage during dominance conflict." "Exactly." A Vorrak fighting another Vorrak could still kill, but their instincts resisted certain actions. The throat was avoided unless the fight became survival combat. Claws retracted during social dominance. Attacks stopped when submission posture appeared. Those inhibitions had existed before civilization. Humanity had no equivalent strong enough to build public safety around. "We've got instincts too," Evan said, "but not the kind I'd build public safety around." "You regulate violence culturally." "Rules, laws, sports, training." Kharvek remembered Chief Rel's comment. "How much violence is too much violence?" Evan nodded. "Boxing has rules, wrestling has rules, martial arts have rules, military forces have rules of engagement, police have use of force policies. Civilian self-defense law asks whether force was necessary and proportionate. You create rules because you are violent." Evan thought about it. "We create rules because violence is easy to start and hard to undo." Kharvek looked toward the human's small, clawless hands, where several cuts still healed across the knuckles. "Your species practices combat recreationally." "Some people do." "Why?" "Control." Kharvek looked up. Evan shrugged. "You learn what it feels like to get hit, how to move, how to stay calm. How to stop when someone's done. Good training isn't about learning to hurt people." "What is it about?" "Learning not to panic when you could." Kharvek considered everything he had believed about humans, their refusal of challenges, their rules, their constant de-escalation, their absurd tendency to apologize after accidental contact. He had interpreted all of it as fear of violence. It was just not the kind of fear he had imagined. Kharvek leaned forward. "The first time I struck you, you said, 'You get one.'" Evan nodded. "What did you mean?" "That I wasn't going to hit you over one stupid punch." "The second?" "I was reconsidering." Kharvek almost smiled. "Almost. You offered me exits." "Yes." "I interpreted them as weakness." "Yes." "That was foolish." Evan looked at him. "Yes." Kharvek accepted that too. Then he asked the question he had avoided for 11 days. "What would you have done if I had seriously injured Tali?" Evan became very still. The maintenance bay hummed around them with air recyclers, coolant pumps, and distant machinery. Kharvek waited. Evan looked toward the open door. Tali was not there. Good, finally, Evan said. I'm glad we didn't find out. Kharvek's plates lowered. It was not an answer, which made it more effective than one. Would you have killed me? Evan met his eyes. I don't know. Kharvek believed him. That frightened him more than certainty would have. Evan continued. And that's the point. Kharvek frowned. The point? If I knew exactly what I would do when somebody I care about was being hurt, I could build a neat little rule around it. The human looked down at his hands again, but people don't always know themselves that well. Kharvek remembered the red comet, the speed, the blood, the shoulder, and the 17 choices not made. What happens when a human loses control? Evan gave him a tired smile. Sometimes nothing. And sometimes. That's why we spend so much time teaching each other not to. Kharvek sat silently. Eventually, Evan picked up his tool. Was that all? No. Evan looked up. Kharvek placed one hand against his own chest, a Vorrak gesture of formal acknowledgement. I was wrong. Evan blinked. That physically hurt you to say, didn't it? Yes. Appreciate it. Kharvek rose. At the door he stopped. Human. Yeah. I would like to learn boxing. Evan stared, then laughed so hard he had to hold his injured ribs. Chapter 6. The New Rule. Kharvek's first boxing coach was 61 years old. Her name was Elena Vasquez. She stood 160 centimeters tall. Kharvek outweighed her by 140 kilograms. He loved her immediately. Hands up. Kharvek raised all four. Coach Vasquez stared. Okay, that's cheating. You instructed me to raise my hands. I forgot you had extras. You are poorly prepared. She struck him in the abdomen with a padded training stick. Kharvek grunted. Do not become smug in my gym. It is not a gym. She hit him again. It is now. Human boxing had not been designed for four-armed participants. This created problems. The first was that Kharvek could protect his head, body, and attack simultaneously. The second was that Coach Vasquez considered this offensive to the spirit of the exercise. She tied two of his arms behind his back. Kharvek objected. She ignored him. Evan watched from outside the ring. Tali sat beside him eating something from a paper container. This is the happiest I have ever seen Kharvek. Inside the ring, Coach Vasquez shouted. Stop trying to kill the bag. Kharvek struck the heavy bag again. It tore free from the ceiling. The room went silent. Kharvek looked toward the coach. I believe the bag was defective. Coach Vasquez closed her eyes. Rourke. Evan raised both hands. Not my idea. You brought him here. He asked. You could have lied. Tali chirped happily. Kharvek helped reinstall the bag. Training continued. Slowly, something changed, not only in Kharvek. Across Meridian Exchange, security departments reviewed their assumptions, and the station updated its social combat guidance. Human cultural briefings added a line. Human refusal of a physical challenge should not be interpreted as submission. Vorrak guidance added another. Do not assume withdrawal indicates loss of combat will. The red comet posted a sign. It read, no weapons, no unsanctioned dominance contests, no challenging humans to prove Earth is a deathworld. We are tired of replacing tables. Evan objected to the third rule. Why are humans specifically mentioned? The bartender pointed at Kharvek. Because of him. That seems discriminatory. You broke 4 tables. They broke 2. You used Kharvek to break 1. Kharvek considered. That was true. Evan looked betrayed. You're supposed to be on my side now. I have learned accountability. Tali nearly fell off her stool laughing. Months passed and the story spread. As station stories did, it became less accurate each time. Evan became a former Special Forces operative, then a planetary champion, then a genetically enhanced military experiment. Someone eventually claimed he had killed 12 Vorrak with a spoon. Kharvek personally corrected that version. It was 4 Vorrak. 4. And he killed none. The listener looked disappointed. Kharvek did not understand why. The restraint was the interesting part. Eventually, the Vorrak and the human became friends. Neither admitted exactly when. Evan helped Kharvek understand human combat sports. Kharvek taught Evan Vorrak challenge etiquette. This prevented several future misunderstandings. Tali claimed both species needed supervision. Neither disagreed. One evening, nearly 9 months after the Red Comet fight, Kharvek sat at the same bar. The tables had been replaced. One carried a small engraved plaque. This table replaced after Rourke incident. Evan hated it. Kharvek did not. A transport crew newly arrived from the outer systems entered. One of them, a heavily built reptilian, noticed Evan across the room. The human was helping Tali carry a cargo crate she had insisted she could move alone. The reptilian watched him. That is a human. Kharvek drank his raka. Yes. They are smaller than I expected. Yes. No natural armor. No. 2 arms. Usually. The reptilian frowned. I have heard stories. So have I. They say humans are dangerous. Kharvek looked across the bar. Evan lowered the crate. Tali immediately told him it was in the wrong place. He picked it up again without argument. Kharvek smiled. They are. The newcomer studied Evan. He does not appear dangerous. No. Then why? Kharvek considered the question carefully. Months earlier, Kharvek would have answered with strength, pain tolerance, adrenaline, combat improvisation, or the ability to keep moving after injury. All were true. None were the reason. Humans are not dangerous because they enjoy fighting. The reptilian waited. Kharvek looked at Evan. They are dangerous because they spend their entire lives learning when not to. The newcomer laughed. Kharvek did not. The laughter stopped. Across the galaxy, predators had evolved claws, armor, venom, threat displays, and submission instincts, built-in limits that prevented every conflict from becoming lethal. Humans had inherited something less reliable: anger, fear, adrenaline, and fragile bodies capable of surviving just enough damage to make poor decisions for longer than seemed medically reasonable. So they invented rules. Walk away. Do not throw the first punch. Stop when the other person stops. Use only the force necessary. Protect the head. Tap when you are done. Obey the referee. Obey the law. Control yourself. Their civilization repeated those lessons to children, soldiers, athletes, police officers, and anyone angry enough to forget them. Not because humans were peaceful by nature, and not because they were uniquely violent, but because somewhere in their history they had learned an uncomfortable truth. Starting a fight was easy. Knowing exactly where it would end was not. Kharvek had once thought Evan Rourke refused to fight because he feared being hurt. He had been half right. The human did fear violence. Experienced humans usually did. They feared what one bad fall could do, what one uncontrolled strike could start, what fear could become after anger joined it, what good people could do in a few terrible seconds, and what could never be taken back afterward. That was why experienced species eventually learned to believe a human who said, I don't want to fight. Because the frightening part was never what happened when the human became angry. It was how much effort he had been spending not to.